My name is Miller. Most people called me Your Honor for 30 years. Now, the only person who calls me anything is the woman who brings my groceries on Tuesdays, and she just calls me Sir. I'm 84 years old. Do you know what happens when you reach 84? The world gets very quiet. The phones stop ringing. The invitations stop coming. You're left with nothing but the four walls of your study and the ghosts you invited in over a long, prestigious career. I sit here in this leather chair. It's the same one I had in my chambers, and I look at my hands. They're spotted now, thin skin like parchment, trembling just a little bit. These are the hands that signed the orders. These are the hands that picked up the gavel and brought it down with the weight of God Himself. Bang, 10 years. Bang, 20 years. Bang, life without the possibility of parole. It felt good back then. That's the truth no one wants to admit. It felt like I was cleaning up the world. I remember the 1990s. If you weren't there, or if you were too young, you can't imagine the smell of it. It smelled like fear. The news was nothing but sirens and flashing lights. The politicians were screaming about super predators and crack babies. There was this hunger in the air. People didn't want justice. They wanted blood. They wanted the streets swept clean, and they handed me the broom. I was a tough-on-crime judge. That was my brand. I wore it like a suit of armor. I'd walk into that courtroom, the air smelling of floor wax and old paper, and I felt like a surgeon cutting out a cancer. I look back at the photos of myself from 1994. I looked so certain. My jaw was set. My robe was pressed. I really believed that if I sent enough 20-year-old boys to a concrete box for the rest of their natural lives, the world would finally be safe. I was wrong. I was so goddamned wrong. My daily routine is a joke now. I wake up at 5:30 a.m. because my body doesn't know how to sleep past dawn anymore. I make a pot of coffee, black, bitter, just the way I like it. I sit by the window and watch the sun come up over a world that has mostly forgotten I exist. I spend a lot of time in the basement. That's where the boxes are. I have copies of the transcripts, thousands of them. I know I should have burned them when I retired, but I couldn't. It's like a murderer keeping trophies, I suppose. Only I wasn't the one with the gun. I was the one with the pen. Sometimes I'll pull a file at random. I'll sit there on a dusty milk crate, the basement air cold and damp on my bones, and I'll read. The People versus Marcus Washington, 1995. Charge, possession with intent to distribute. Amount, 50 grams of crack cocaine. I remember Marcus. He was 19. He had these eyes. They weren't angry, they were just wide, like a deer caught in the high beams of a semi-truck. He didn't have a record, not a violent one anyway, but the laws back then, the laws I championed, didn't care about records. They cared about numbers, the 3 strikes law, mandatory minimums. I remember the defense attorney pleading with me, "Your Honor, he's a kid. He was holding it for a brother. Give him a chance at rehab." And I remember my own voice. It sounded so cold, so professional. "The law is the law, counselor. We have to send a message." I sent a message, all right. I sent a 19-year-old boy to maximum security prison for 30 years. I remember the sound his mother made when the deputies led him away. It wasn't a scream, it was a moan, like the earth itself was cracking open. I didn't blink. I just looked down at my notes and called the next case. I had a lunch meeting at 12:30. I had a steak waiting for me at the club. I tell myself I was just doing my job. That's the lie we all tell when we're part of a machine. I didn't make the laws, I just applied them. But at 84, that lie starts to taste like ash in your mouth. I look at the statistics now. I see the numbers. In the 90s, we saw a massive explosion in the prison population. We locked up an entire generation, specifically an entire generation of young black and brown men. At the time, I told myself it was about deterrence. But you can't deter poverty with a prison cell. You can't deter addiction with a cage. You just warehouse it. You hide it away so the nice people in the suburbs don't have to look at it while they eat their dinners. I was the warehouse foreman. I sat on that bench, elevated above everyone else. I looked down on them. That's the key, looking down. When you look down on someone, they stop being human. They become a defendant. They become a case number. They become a problem to be solved. I remember the smell of the courtroom. It's a very specific smell, a mix of cheap suits, nervous sweat, and that heavy, dusty scent of old law books. It's the smell of lives being dismantled. I used to think I was the smartest man in the room. I'd deliver these lectures from the bench. I'd tell these young men about personal responsibility and the choices we make. God, the arrogance! I was a man who had never missed a meal in his life. I was a man with a law degree and a pension and a house with a white fence. And there I was, lecturing a boy who grew up in a war zone about his choices. His choice was to starve or to carry a bag for $20. My choice was to be a human being or a rubber stamp. I chose the stamp. A few weeks ago, I received a letter. It wasn't the first. Over the years, I've gotten hundreds. Usually, they're full of curses. I hope you rot. I hope you see my face when I die. I used to toss those in the trash. I called them the occupational hazard of the job. But this letter was different. It was from a man named David. I sentenced him in 1997. He was one of the 3 strikes cases, a string of non-violent thefts, shoplifting, breaking into a garage to sleep, small things. But on the 3rd one, the law said I had to bury him. The letter didn't have any curses. It just had a photo. It was a photo of David. He's 60 now. He's standing outside a prison gate. He looks like a ghost. His hair is white. His shoulders are slumped. He looks older than I do, even though he's 20 years younger. In the letter, he wrote, "Judge Miller, I just got out. I have nowhere to go. My parents are dead. My kids don't know who I am. I spent 26 years in a cage because I stole a toolbox. I just wanted to tell you that I'm still alive. I don't know why, but I am." I couldn't put the letter down. I took it into the kitchen. I sat at the table, and I looked at that photo until the sun went down. I started thinking about the math. I served on the bench for 30 years. I probably handled 20 cases a day. If only 10% of those were tough sentences, that's thousands of years. 10 years here, 20 years there, 5 years for a first-time offense. Add them up. I have stolen thousands upon thousands of years from the world. Think about what those years look like. It's not just time served. It's missed birthdays. It's fathers who weren't there to walk their daughters down the aisle. It's sons who weren't there to bury their mothers. It's the smell of a home-cooked meal, the feel of a soft bed, the sound of a child's laughter. All of it gone. I traded all those human experiences for a tough-on-crime reputation and a seat on the district court. The room is getting colder now. I can feel the draft coming in under the door. I found myself doing something I haven't done in years. I went back to the old courthouse. I didn't go inside. I don't think I could stand the smell of the wax anymore. I just sat in my car across the street. I watched the people going in. The same people, the same wide-eyed boys, the same mothers with their heads in their hands. The machine is still running. It didn't stop just because I retired. But then I saw something that broke me. I saw a man coming out. He was leaning on a cane. He looked around the street like he was on another planet. He looked lost. He looked broken. And in that second, he looked right at my car. I froze. I felt a cold sweat break out on the back of my neck. I thought, does he recognize me? Does he know I'm the one who did this to him? He didn't. He just kept walking. But in that moment, I realized something. I am 84 years old. I am at the end of my life. And I have realized that the man behind the bench, the man in the black robe, the man I spent my whole life being, he wasn't the hero. He was the one who committed the greatest crime of all. I need to tell you what I did next, because what I did, it's going to change everything. I thought I could just sit here and wait to die, but the ghosts won't let me. There's one specific case, one specific man, and if I don't fix it now, if I don't find a way to make it right, I'm going to go to my grave with more blood on my hands than any man I ever sentenced. I didn't just send them to prison, I helped build the gallows, and now I'm the one standing on the trapdoor. They say your sins find you out. I always thought that was a line for the Sunday morning pulpit, something to scare the people who didn't have the education to know better. I thought if you followed the rules, the man-made, written-down, codified rules, you were safe. I was wrong. The rules don't protect your soul. They just give you a place to hide until the walls cave in. It happened on a Tuesday, 3 months ago. I was down in that basement again. The air was particularly thick that day, tasting of damp concrete and that metallic sour smell of old filing cabinets. I was looking for Elijah Vance. Elijah, 1998. I remember the day I sentenced him. It was a Tuesday then, too. I remember because I had a golf game later that afternoon. I was checking my watch while his defense attorney was mid-sentence. I was annoyed. I was thinking about the heat on the green, not the heat of the hell I was about to drop this boy into. Elijah was 22. He'd been caught with a firearm. He hadn't fired it, he hadn't even pointed it at anyone, but he'd been in a car where a crime had happened 3 years prior, a strike. And he had a drug possession when he was 18, another strike. Under the laws I'd helped lobby for, my hands were tied. But they weren't. I could have looked for a loophole. I could have been the activist judge I used to rail against in my speeches. I could have seen a human being. Instead, I saw a chance to prove I was the toughest man in the county. I was up for a seat on the state Supreme Court. The papers were watching. I gave him life, no parole. As I sat there in my basement, 30 years later, I finally found his file. It was at the bottom of a water-damaged box. I pulled it out, and a Polaroid fell out from the evidence bag. It was a photo of the weapon,
a rusted-out .22 caliber pistol that probably would have blown up in his hand if he'd tried to fire it. And then I saw the letter from his sister. It was tucked in the back of the transcript. I had never read it, not once. "Please, Judge Miller, our mother is sick. Elijah is the only one who works. He only bought that gun because the neighborhood is getting bad. He's a good boy. Please don't take him away forever." I felt a sudden, sharp heat in my chest. It wasn't like the movies. There was no dramatic clutching of the heart. It just felt like a hot iron was being pressed into my sternum. The basement started to spin. The gray concrete walls seemed to close in, turning into the gray cinder blocks of a prison cell. "Is this it?" I thought. "Is this where I die? Between a pile of boxes and a lie?" I tried to stand up, but my legs felt like they were made of water. I hit the floor, hard. The cold tile felt good against my face, but I couldn't breathe. Every time I tried to suck in air, I saw Elijah's face, not the 22-year-old boy. I saw him as he would be now, 50-odd years old, gray, wasted, a life spent in a cage because I wanted a promotion. I reached for my phone, but my arm wouldn't move. I just lay there, staring at the bottom of the filing cabinet. "You deserve this," a voice whispered in my head. It wasn't God. It was me, the real me. The one I'd kept buried under the black robe for 30 years. "You're not a judge, you're a jailer, and now you're finally in your own cell." I woke up 3 days later in the ICU. The lights were that horrible, aggressive, fluorescent white. Everything smelled like bleach and sickness. My chest was sore, and there were tubes snaking out of my arms like plastic vines. My daughter, Sarah, was sitting in the chair by the bed. She's a lawyer, too, successful, cold, just like I taught her to be. She didn't hold my hand. She just looked up from her emails and said, "The doctor says it was a myocardial infarction, stress-induced. What were you doing in the basement, Dad? You know it's too damp down there for your lungs." "I was looking for a ghost, Sarah," I croaked. My voice sounded like sandpaper. She just sighed and went back to her emails. That's when the dark night truly began. Not in the basement, but in that hospital bed. When you're 84 and you've had a heart attack, they don't let you do much. They leave you alone with your thoughts. And my thoughts were a gallery of the damned. I started seeing them, all of them. The super predators, the thugs, the career criminals. I saw a boy named Terrence, 15 years old, tried as an adult for a robbery where nobody got hurt. I gave him 20. I remember he cried so hard he vomited in the well of the court. I remember being disgusted by the mess. I saw a woman named Maria. She'd been a mule for her boyfriend. She had 3 kids. I gave her 15. I remember thinking she should have thought about her kids before she broke the law. I lay there in the dark, the monitor beeping, and for the first time in my life, I stripped away the law. I stripped away the mandatory minimums. I stripped away the societal good. And what was left? A man in a position of absolute power who lacked the courage to be merciful. I realized that I hadn't been tough on crime. I had been tough on the poor. I had been tough on the broken. I had been tough because it was the easiest thing in the world to be. It takes no effort to swing a gavel and say, "Life."
It takes a mountain of strength to look at a broken human being and say, I see you. I see your struggle. Let's find a way back. I never found the way back for anyone. I only found the way in. One night, a nurse came in. A young man, maybe 25. He was black, with a kind face and tired eyes. He was checking my vitals, moving quietly so as not to wake the patient in the next bed. He saw I was awake. "Can't sleep, Judge?" he asked. He knew who I was. Most people in this town do. "No," I said. "Too much noise." "It's quiet in here," he said, tilting his head. "Not in my head, son. Not in my head." He stopped what he was doing and looked at me, not with the respect I was used to, not with fear, just with a sort of weary pity. "My uncle is in Terre Haute, sentenced in '96, a judge named Miller. Maybe you know him." The air left my lungs again, not a heart attack, this time just shame. A shame so heavy I thought it would crush the bed frame. I might know," I whispered.
"He's a good man," the nurse said, adjusting my IV drip. "He taught me how to read through letters. He's been in for 28 years for a nonviolent drug charge. My mom says the judge wanted to make an example out of him." He finished his work and walked to the door. Before he left, he turned off the main light, leaving only the dim glow of the monitors. "Have a good night, Judge. I hope you find some peace." I didn't find peace. I found a mirror. I spent the next 4 days in that bed, staring at the ceiling. I realized that my entire legacy, the buildings named after me, the portraits in the hallway, the Distinguished Jurist Awards, was built on a foundation of human bones. I had been a great man because I had been a cruel man. I thought about the men I broke. I thought about how they were probably sitting in cells right now, staring at the same kind of white ceilings, listening to the same kind of silence. Except their silence had lasted 30 years. And then the anger started. Not at the system, not at the politicians, but at myself. I had been a coward, a high-functioning, prestigious, well-dressed coward. I had followed the path of least resistance because it led to the highest rewards. I decided right then, with my heart fluttering like a trapped bird in my chest, that I couldn't die like this. I couldn't go out as Judge Miller the Enforcer. I had to do something that would likely ruin what's left of my reputation, something that my daughter would hate, something that the legal community would call me senile or crazy. I wasn't looking for redemption. I don't think guys like me get redemption. You don't get to erase 30 years of misery with one good deed at the end, but you can at least tell the truth. I called my clerk the next morning. Not my current one. I don't have one. But my old clerk from the '90s, the only one who stayed in touch. "Bring me the files," I told him. "Which ones, Judge?" "All of them. Every life sentence I handed down between 1990 and 2000. Every mandatory minimum. Every 3 strikes case. Bring them to my house. I'm checking out of here tomorrow." "Judge, the doctors say." "I don't care what the doctors say. I'm 84 years old. I'm dying anyway. I'd rather die with a clear head than a safe heart." I realized that the machine I helped build was still running. It was still eating people, and I was the only one who knew where the off switch was hidden. Or at least, I was the only one who could scream loud enough to make people look at the gears. But there was a problem, a big one. One of the cases, the one I need to fix the most, wasn't just a mistake of toughness. It was a mistake of corruption, and I was the one who let it happen. If I open this door, I'm not just admitting I was mean, I'm admitting I was a criminal. I checked myself out of the hospital, against medical advice. Sarah was furious. She said I was being melodramatic. She said I was tarnishing the family name. The family name. I sat in my study, the light from my desk lamp casting long skeletal shadows across the room. I had the file in front of me. The People versus Julian Reed, 1999. This was the one. This was the rot at the center of my soul. Julian was accused of a robbery homicide. He was 21. He had an alibi, a girlfriend who swore he was with her. But the prosecution had a star witness, a jailhouse snitch who claimed Julian confessed. Halfway through the trial, my clerk brought me a memo. The lead detective had suppressed a piece of evidence, a CCTV tape from a gas station 3 miles away that showed Julian buying a soda at the exact time of the murder. I had the power to stop it. I could have declared a mistrial. I could have held that detective in contempt. But it was 2 weeks before the election. My opponent was running ads calling me soft. If I blew up a high-profile murder trial because of a technicality, I'd lose. And I wanted that seat on the state Supreme Court more than I wanted to be a good man. I looked at the memo, I looked at my clerk, a kid who looked up to me, and I told him to shred it. It's hearsay, I lied. It's not authenticated. Don't let it distract us. Julian Reed got life without parole. I got my seat on the high court. I spent 25 years pretending that memo never existed. But lying to the world is easy. Lying to the man in the mirror at 3 a.m., that's the part that kills you. I didn't call a lawyer. I called a journalist, a young woman from the city paper who had been writing about the 90s sentencing crisis. She came to my house the next morning. She looked at me like I was a relic from a museum, a dusty old man in a cardigan. She didn't expect a confession. I handed her the affidavit. I'd spent the whole night writing it. It wasn't a legal brief. It was a suicide note for my reputation. I detailed the Reed case. I detailed the suppressed evidence. I admitted to the shredding. I admitted to the ambition that became a sickness. She read it in silence. When she finished, she looked at me, and her eyes weren't full of respect. They were full of horror.
"Why now, Judge?" she asked. "Julian Reed died in prison 4 years ago." The room went cold. "What?" I whispered. "He died of a respiratory infection during the COVID outbreak. He died in a bunk, alone, in a facility that didn't have enough ventilators." I sat back in my leather chair, the chair that felt like a throne for 30 years. It felt like a casket now. He was gone. I had waited too long. I had spent my whole life waiting for the right time to be honest. And while I waited, the man I murdered with my silence had simply ceased to be. I'm 84 years old, and I've learned the hardest lesson a human being can learn. Regret is the only thing you can't outrun. You can outrun your enemies. You can outrun the law. You can even outrun your own heart for a while. But when you get to the end of the line, your regrets are waiting for you, and they have all the time in the world. I gave that interview. I told the truth.
The fallout was exactly what Sarah feared. My name was dragged through the mud. The state bar launched an investigation into my past cases. The portrait of me in the courthouse was taken down and put in a storage closet. My friends from the club stopped calling. Good, let them forget me. I deserve to be forgotten. But you're listening to this for a reason. Maybe you're young, maybe you're ambitious, maybe you're in a job where you have power over people's lives, whether you're a boss, a cop, a teacher, or a judge. Listen to me. Listen to the old man who ruined everything. We live in a world that rewards toughness. We live in a world that tells you that being strong means being heartless. They tell you that the system is more important than the person. They tell you that just doing your job is a valid excuse for participating in a massacre of human potential. It's a lie. The system is nothing but a collection of people. And if the people decide to be cowards, the system becomes a monster. I want you to look at your life right now. Look at the choices you're making to get ahead. Are you stepping on faces to climb the ladder? Are you ignoring the memos in your own life because they're inconvenient? Are you trading your soul for a title? Because I promise you, at 84, the title doesn't mean a damn thing. Your honor doesn't keep you warm. Distinguished jurist doesn't stop the ghosts from screaming. The only thing that matters when you're staring at the finish line is whether or not you were kind, whether or not you were fair, whether or not you saw the human being standing in front of you instead of a case number. I spent 30 years being tough on crime. I should have spent 30 years being tough on injustice. I wake up every morning now, and I look at that photo of David, the man who got out after 26 years. I sent him some money, a lot of it, my entire pension, actually. Sarah was livid, but I don't care. It's not restitution. You can't buy back 26 years. It's all I have left to give. I'm waiting for the end now. My heart is tired. The doctors say it's only a matter of weeks. I'm not afraid of dying. I'm afraid of what comes after. I'm afraid I'll have to stand before a judge who doesn't care about mandatory minimums. I'm afraid I'll have to look Julian Reed in the eye and tell him why I thought my career was worth his life, and I won't have an answer. Before I go, I have one request. Don't be me. Don't wait until your heart is failing to find your conscience. Don't wait until it's too late to say, I was wrong. Wake up. Look at the people around you. See them. Not as resources, not as competitors, not as defendants. See them as humans. Mercy isn't weakness. Mercy is the highest form of strength. It took me 84 years to realize that. I hope it takes you less. The gavel is coming down for us all eventually. Make sure that when it does, the verdict on your life is something you can live with. If you've listened to this, don't just like it, don't just share it. Go out today and be better than I was. Find someone you've judged too harshly. Find someone you've ignored and see them. That's the only way to break the machine. Goodbye.